Getting ready to sell your home? Have you accepted an offer from a buyer? In this video, the real estate attorneys at the Donaldson Law Firm will walk you through what to expect when you sell real estate in New York. Once you've accepted an offer, your realtor will prepare a memo of sale that includes all of the negotiated terms, including the name of the buyer, the purchase price, approximate closing date, whether the buyer is obtaining a mortgage, etc. As attorney for the seller, our office will then use that information and draft the contract of sale, which we will then email to the attorney for the buyer. Once we finish negotiating the contract, the buyer will sign first and send the deposit to our office, which we will hold in escrow until closing. It's important to note that, even though the buyer has signed the contract and delivered the deposit, the seller has no obligation to sell until he or she also signs. In other words, it's not until both the buyer and seller have signed the contract that it is considered to be in full force and effect. After the contract is signed, the buyer must conduct its due diligence by applying for a loan and reviewing title. For more information about title reports, please check out the rest of our video series. Before we go any further, it's important to point out that the contract states the closing will occur on or about a certain date, meaning the closing date in the contract is an approximate date only. Why? Because certain conditions must be satisfied before the actual closing can happen. For example, if the buyer is obtaining a loan, the closing will not be scheduled until the underwriting process is final and the lender is ready to close. That said, please do not assume the closing will happen on the same date in the contract. However, once the buyer's lender has issued what's called the clear to close, the attorneys will schedule the actual closing date. Between receiving the clear to close and the closing itself, the attorneys will finalize the total amount due to the seller at closing, less the contract deposit, the balance of any current mortgage loan, and any adjustments for property taxes, fuel oil, and maintenance fees, if any. To be clear, if there is an existing mortgage on the property, the buyer will bring a separate check to the closing to pay off the balance of the loan. The title company will take the check at closing to ensure it is sent to the appropriate bank. Then, at closing, the seller will transfer ownership of the property to the buyer by signing a deed or, if the property is a cooperative, assigning the proprietary lease to the new owner. In return, the seller will receive the balance of the sale proceeds. While other issues may arise during the closing process, the real estate attorneys at the Donaldson Law Firm are available to answer any questions or concerns you may have.